So I'll be ready in 3, 2, 1. So, ladies and gentlemen, what would it be if there's a world or a nation without its culture? It would be likely that they're asking about their whole identity, whole personality, whole character, right? As due to the fact they don't have identity, this would lead that identity crisis. So, ladies and gentlemen, this house would prioritize preserving cultural tradition and even at the cost of slowing social progress. You may ask why? Well, here's the thing. The fact is that many of the the evolution of the year has been causing many problems, such as the rise of technology and the misuse technology, as they were seen as they were doing into the bad things, not the good things, stuff like that. So, ladies and gentlemen, before going into my speech, I'll divide it into two sections, which are the first one is that my background, which including definition, status quo, stakeholder, urgency, goal, and or mechanism. So that is my background, and the second one is that my argument. So moving on into my background, the first one is that by the definition of it. So, ladies and gentlemen, cultural tradition is a tradition passed by generation to generation. It involves art, language, music, clothes, and especially tradition of it, such as for the influence that they mentioned is that the rumah adat, but due to society has been adapted into technologies and modern life made the cultural tradition struggling. So we are willingness to preserve cultural tradition and even if it costs slowing social progress, as we now refer to more rational thinking. So, ladies and gentlemen, moving on into my stakeholder or current situation right now. So, ladies and gentlemen, many of opportunities that government give has been a total fail due to modern rational thing. Many society prefers work with technology rather than backward and like without a technology such like that. Because this government has been really struggling as they already give many projects, but it would likely to be fail as the young generation prefer modern life rather than preserve their culture. So, ladies and gentlemen, moving on into my stakeholder and my urgency. So, a stakeholder, which are including two sections, which are government and by the society of it. So, ladies and gentlemen, moving on into the urgency. So, as government team has already tried many concepts and projects that can be accepted by all generation, especially the young generation, as the fact they were the one who hold their culture, tradition, stuff like that. So moving on into the society, that many of these still debate whether it's good to be modern life or traditional life, as the cultural tradition is slowly losing from their nation, stuff like that. So, ladies and gentlemen, moving on into my mechanism and our goal. So our mechanism is that we would pushing young generation to be more aware with technology, because due to the fact that this centuries that has been causing many issues with that, one of the fact that this technology has been misused and has been used for the bad things, stuff like that. So we would pushing young generation to be more aware with the technologies of it and the misuse of it. So, and moving on into the second one is that make cultural tradition into the textbook or curriculum or make this young generation to be aware. So our goal, that ladies and gentlemen, our goal would be to be very simple and clear. We would preserve cultural tradition with technology, since it can be attract young generation to be more aware to their culture as their national identity. But we would like to try to not this young generation to misuse it. So, ladies and gentlemen, moving on into my argument. So, before I went into my argument, I will divide it into two sections, which are the endangered culture tradition, and second one is that the identity crisis of it. So, ladies and gentlemen, you may ask why. Well, here's the thing. This has been causing many endangered cultural tradition to their nation and the society. So like that. And the second one is that identity crisis that has been a problem with many of young generations as for now. So, ladies and gentlemen, moving on into my first argument is that the endangered culture tradition. So, as you know, old generation has been struggling to make young generation to preserve their cultural tradition. But young generation has rebelled against their culture, since many young generation had been brainwashed of misuse technology. You may ask why? Well, here's the thing. Because the fact that this technology has been causing much issues, since it was an instance as they has been brainwashed due to the fact that it was brainwashed by this influencer, by media social, or by their artists, such as example. Because due to the fact that this young generation who wants to to follow their lifestyle or to like because of their liking their lifestyle stuff like that. So therefore they would likely to think it's better, it's giving a better life rather than the traditional cultural such as that. This would likely think that they would rather this would think also, and also this is the factor is that this influencer make these young gen to be awake, or especially in conditional terms awake is that the meaning that these people was realized too soon rather than many of the people. So stuff like that. So as many of them stated that their culture was weird, as the influencers don't like it, stuff like that. Like, oh, your culture was like this. I don't really think it's a good idea. I don't think it's really weird, stuff like that. So therefore, this would likely making this young generation to lose their traditional culture as the exception of their influencer, making many young gen fought back to rebel against their culture. Without realizing, this would likely making their cultural traditional to be loose, since they were the one who's holding the future of this cultural traditional, as they it would be rather to be in danger, to be lost by the war, or it would be likely causing grow much after. So, ladies and gentlemen, we would think it's that endangered tradition was caused by the misuse technology, stuff like that. As example of many of the celebrity influencers stated that their to their friends that their traditional is weird. So we will likely think that it was the misuse technology, stuff like that. So, ladies and gentlemen, moving on into my second argument is that the identity crisis of it. So, as many of this young generation has been focused on social progress, but due to the fact they have been started to lose their identity. You may ask why? Well, here's the thing. As because they're following modern life, also they would likely to modify code to make it more to and making it more to lose the essential of its culture itself. It's good, but it was only causing that they're only losing their culture, as they're willing to losing their culture only for a trend, stuff like that. As many people, we can see the media social that has been making many culture to be a trend, such as matcha, such as food, traditional clothes, or other. It would likely to be a trend, but it's only for a while. And this young generation started to thinking their identity crisis because due to the fact that these people didn't had. So that is my second argument. And moving on into the worst scenario, we assume that our opposed team would blaming old generation as they were cruel, since they tried to preserve culture as only to run their anger to fan their anger to young generation. But we think it's the misuse of opportunity technologies, and we think, and my proportional is think that it was likely to back up this scenario. So, ladies and gentlemen, I concluded all of my speech. We would like to support and we would like to prioritize preserving cultural tradition even at the cost of slowing social progress.